Hello, everyone. Today's topic is why bad things happen to good people, what Buddhism teaches. Sometimes we wonder how on earth it could be that someone who is known for being good and living an honest life could end up going through terrible misfortune. On the flip side, we may feel a sense of injustice when someone who is constantly doing awful things gets to live a happy life, seemingly free of consequence. We might also wonder why we ourselves have to suffer so much when we're trying to live an honest life. Why do good people have to suffer while bad people get everything they want? Is there even any justice in this world? I'd imagine all of us will have pondered this to some extent. This raises the question, what does Buddhism teach regarding why bad things happen to good people? The Buddhist teachings on this give a logical explanation that should hopefully make a fair bit of sense to you, so I'd like to tell you about that today. Today I will talk about these things. 1. Hui and Dao Zhi. 2. Karmic retribution. 3. Present turn karma and next turn karma. It is said that Confucius, the founder of Confucianism, had 3,000 disciples. One of his closest disciples was Yan Hui. Yan Hui faithfully followed Confucius's teachings, and Confucius even saw him as his successor. He was a man of excellent character, being as he was extremely intelligent, perceptive, and earnest. However, Yan Hui lived in poverty and even lacked food to eat, and he ended up dying at a young age. It pained Confucius terribly to learn that such a devoted disciple as Yan Hui had died young after a life of poverty, and he is said to have lamented, "Heaven is destroying me." In the same time period, there lived another man called Dao Zhi. Much like Japan's own Ishikawa Goemon, Dao Zhi was a notorious master thief who made his mark on Chinese history. He committed all manner of crimes, including robbery and murder. He would enjoy a long and affluent life, dying of natural causes at a ripe old age. Comparing these two men's lives might well leave some people despairing that there is no justice in this world and that they can no longer tell what is right and what is wrong. Clearly, we tend to think that fortune smiles upon kind, honest, hard-working people, and that it is those inclined towards misdeeds who speak ill of others, deceive them, and betray them, that will suffer misfortune. Buddhism teaches of the law of cause and effect, and in fact, this is the foundation of Buddhism. Law here means the eternally, universally unchanging truth. The law of cause and effect tells us that all effects have a cause, and that no effect ever comes about without a cause even once in a million cases. It is the very roots and trunk of Buddhism. The law of cause and effect goes, good causes produce good effects. Bad causes produce bad effects. Own causes produce own effects. Good causes means good deeds. Good deeds bring good effects. Effects or results are our fortune or fate. Good effects means happiness. Sakyamuni Buddha taught that happiness is brought about by us planting roots of good in our everyday lives. Bad causes produce bad effects means that doing bad deeds will bring us bad results. Bad effects means an unfortunate fate. Deeds are also called karma, and Sakyamuni Buddha taught that our misfortune is brought about by our bad karma or bad deed. You see, our deeds have the power to create our fate. Good deeds produce good karmic power, which produces a good fate, and bad deeds produce bad karmic power, which produces a bad fate. Whether good or bad, it is the seeds we sow that produce the fruits we reap. Everything that happens to us, whether positive or negative, comes from our own deeds. This is the meaning of own causes produce own effects, that the seeds we sow whether good or bad, produce all of our effect. I'd imagine that most people who hear about the Buddhist law of cause and effect would find it makes sense that there is this all-encompassing rule. Most people will be able to look at their own experiences and agree that good deeds do produce good results, and that if you do bad things, then of course it'll come back to you. What the law of cause and effect tells us will align with the things most people have seen and heard themselves. Therefore, a lot of people are able to accept the law of cause and effect as a rule of thumb and act in accordance with it. Even so, you might wonder, surely there must be exceptions to this rule. However, Sakyamuni Buddha taught that there is not a single exception to the law of cause and effect, even once in a million cases. Never will good deeds produce misfortune, and never will bad deeds produce good fortune. Sakyamuni must have heard many people protest that there have to be exceptions to the law of cause and effect, but he persistently taught that there are none whatsoever. He taught that this law is the truth that never changes regardless of time and place. But that then raises such questions as, well, what about Hui and Dao Zhi? Hui did good deeds and suffered all his life, while Dao Zhi did all sorts of terrible deeds and was blessed with good things. Doesn't that contradict the law of cause and effect? In this way, there are various things that do seem to be exceptions to the law. So we tend to think that the law of cause and effect is only a general rule, and that things can happen differently from what is taught. But Buddhism teaches that this law is absolute and unwavering. How is it then that good, kind people can end up suffering terrible misfortune? What does Buddhism teach on this? Let me explain. There's a poem that goes, "A child who abandons their parents will, in turn, be abandoned. If you fail to look after your elderly parents and instead abuse, neglect, or abandon them, then as retribution, your children will do the same to you. This is called karmic retribution, or the return of your own deeds. When parents are abandoned by their children, it finally sinks in that they too committed the same bad deed towards their own parents. When their children say something cruel to them, they at last become aware that they did the same thing. I too said horrible things to my parents back then. They realize I'm just reaping what I sowed." That is the meaning of this poem. Karmic retribution means receiving results that correspond to the deeds that you did. If you give to others, others will give to you. If you lie to someone, they will lie to you. If you're warm and kind to others, they'll be warm and kind to you, and so on and so forth. That's karmic retribution. It's a Buddhist teaching. To kill and then be killed is also karmic retribution. Buddhism teaches that killing animals is an evil deed, and we have killed many animals. Have you ever felt really guilty after killing an animal? One of my friends once accidentally ran over a raccoon dog. I was driving behind this friend's car when it happened. As we were driving, a raccoon dog ran out into the road, and my friend's car struck it. My friend slammed on the brakes, and the car screeched to a halt, but the animal was dead. A raccoon dog is about as big as a cat, and my friend had a pet cat, so he was racked with guilt. He kept saying, "Oh no, I ran over a raccoon dog." Now, I've never run over an animal, but if I did, I'm sure I'd be racked with guilt too. Running over an animal as big as a raccoon dog or a cat can really make you feel terrible. But what about small insects? If you drive on the highway in the summer, you'll end up with lots of little bug corpses all over your windscreen and bumper. That means you've run into animals and killed them. But we don't feel any heartache for bugs. Far from feeling guilty about killing so many animals, We just feel displeased that we'll have to clean all of them off of our car. Why don't we feel guilty about that? It's because they're so small we don't even register it as a bad deed. If we saw all those little bug corpses enlarged under a magnifying glass, it'd probably make it feel more real to us, and we'd get the sense we'd done something bad. Because they're so small, though, we don't pay them any mind and don't feel bad at all. But if it's something as large as a raccoon dog, we go, "I've run it over. I've done something terrible." This means that whether we feel guilty about a thing depends on whether or not we can see it. One woman I talked to told me about something she'd always felt guilty about. One time, when I was giving a Buddhist talk, I asked if anyone had ever felt they'd committed the evil deed of killing. This woman told me, "My hamster escaped from its cage one night and was running around my room in the dark. I happened to wake up, and my eyes were too bleary to be able to see the hamster, so I accidentally trod on it and killed it. I felt absolutely horrible." Although we feel guilty if we accidentally crush a hamster to death, we don't give a single thought to the ants and other small insects we crush underfoot when walking down the street. Even if we see their corpses on the soles of our shoes, we don't really feel bad about it. That must be because they're just too small for us to see. If some little boy killed his pet, we'd be horrified and think he was a wicked child, but we shrug off the killing of cows and pigs as being necessary for food. We have no sense that killing and eating them counts as a bad deed. We'd label a pet killer as evil, but think nothing of our own acts of killing. That's based on human convenience. We decide arbitrarily what is fine and what is wrong, citing such things as the law or cultural norms. We think, "I don't do terrible things like that. I've been living an honest life," but if we take an honest look back over our lives, we'll see that we too have killed a tremendous number of creatures just to suit ourselves. We might protest that we've not actually killed anything with our own hands, but if we've eaten meat or fish, it means that a butcher or fishmonger has killed and chopped up animals for our benefit. If we weren't there to buy their products, they wouldn't have killed the animals. So we are paying these people to kill for us. Buddhism teaches that this too ultimately amounts to an act of killing on our part. This means, then, that all people are killing a huge number of animals daily. And if we kill, we will be killed. Since we're committing so many acts of killing every day, it could be tomorrow or even today that the result comes back to us and we end up being killed. That is karmic retribution. We are highly indifferent to our evil deeds, thinking nothing of them, but Buddhism teaches that all seeds sown are sure to grow. It tells us that life, whether of humans or of animals, all has the same roots in the cycle of transmigration. Our human arrogance has us convinced that only humans have value and that all other animals exist only to be eaten by us, but from a Buddhist point of view, all life has the same roots. Human beings currently rule over the world and wield our life and death power over other animals as we please. But Buddhism makes clear that killing animals is still a bad deed, and committing it means we could receive the corresponding bad results at any time. So you might have times when you wonder, "I try so hard to be a good person, so why do I have to go through all these terrible things?" But actually, we end up doing so many bad deeds without even realizing it. Killing is just one example. Once you become aware of your own bad deeds, you realize it makes total sense for you to be receiving bad results. Another thing you need to know is that the law of cause and effect runs through the three worlds. These are the worlds of the past, present, and future. The lives we're currently living are the present world, the time before we were born, is the past world, the time after we die, is the future world. Our spiritual history is actually extremely long, as we have cycled through birth and death countless times until now. We have a past life, and a life before that, and a life before that. So we've lived many lives. We've formed karmic bonds with innumerable people over many lifetimes. Having experienced birth and death countless times in the past, we are now living our present lives, and our lives will continue to flow into the endless future. All we know is the time between our birth and death in the present, but Buddhism teaches that our lives flow from the distant past into the present and on into the endless future. If all deeds we did in the present life also produced results in the present, then we could identify the causes of everything that happens to us. If we received retribution for something we remembered, we'd know the cause. That applies, for instance, in the case of a child who abandons their parents being abandoned by their children. Doing deeds and receiving results for them in the same lifetime is called present turn karma. When the results we receive came from deeds we did in the same lifetime, we know, this must be retribution for that thing I did then. Even so, we have a habit of forgetting the bad things we've done and becoming convinced that we've only done good things, which is why we are filled with resentment and wonder what we've done to deserve it when the corresponding results come. But generally speaking, it's easier for us to accept same lifetime retribution. Buddhism also teaches of next turn karma, which is either when deeds from our previous life bring results in the present life, or when deeds from the present life bring results in the next life. Of course, we don't remember what we did in our previous life, since that happened before we were born in the present. Given that there are many things we don't remember doing even in our present lives anyway, it's all the more unsurprising that we have no memories from before our births. But the time must come when we receive results for every deed we've done, even those we don't remember. You might think it's strange that we can receive results for deeds we don't remember, but retribution isn't restricted to deeds we haven't forgotten. Whether we remember it or not, we'll receive the results. If you eat something that's bad for you, it'll affect your health even if you forget about it. If you tell a lie, you'll have to receive the corresponding results for that, even if you have no memory of it. If we only received retribution for deeds we remembered, no one would feel as if there's no justice in the world. We receive retribution for deeds we don't remember too. We have no memory from before we were born, but deeds we did then can produce results in the present life. We've built up a lot of karmic energy from doing deeds in our previous life, so we can receive the results in the present life once the right conditions come along. Also, even if we don't receive the results for deeds we do in this present life, we can end up receiving them in our next life. So, the law of cause and effect actually covers an extremely large span of time. This teaching is called the law of cause and effect of the three worlds. If we looked at just one day in our lives, few people would be pointing to something that happened to them and calling it unjust. Some people might well be having a horrible day despite their efforts to live an honest life. Today's the worst. They might say, I've caught a cold, and now I've lost my wallet. Everything's just going wrong for them even though they try so hard to be a good person, and they're left wondering why. Let's say that Mr. A is someone who always makes an effort to be good. He's the one who's caught a cold and lost his wallet today. On the flip side, Mr. B is constantly doing bad deeds, yet today he won loads of money on the slot machines and has been having a great time spending it all. If we only took today into account, Mr. A could say, "That's not fair. My whole life I've been trying to do good, and I just keep suffering, yet Mr. B hit the jackpot even though he's always doing terrible things. It doesn't make sense. What's happened on this day alone certainly seems unjust. However, If we consider the entire span of our existence, then it makes much more sense to think we'll just have days like this sometimes. Few people would argue that it is unreasonable. From this wider perspective, we'll see that Mr. A will successfully cultivate a good life for himself, while Mr. B will face misfortune. One day, out of that context, though, might seem to tell a different story. One thing to note is that, in the eyes of Sakyamuni Buddha, what we perceive as a lifespan of 80 to 100 years is only about as long as a day. So sometimes there will be cases like Yan Hui, who lived a life of suffering despite being an earnest, upstanding person. His present lifetime was just the time when he had to reap the bad results of the bad seeds he'd sown in the past. However, since he acted with such virtue in that lifetime, he is sure to receive the good results of his actions someday. As for Dao Zhi, the reason why he received good results despite being a thief was that he must have done good deeds in the past. Given all the dreadful things he did in his present lifetime, however, he is sure to have to reap all those bad results at some point. If you take this lifetime as part of a much wider span of existence, the law of cause and effect won't ever seem mistaken to you. If you realize that a lifetime is just like a single day in the grand scheme of things, it'll be clear to you that there is indeed no mistake in the law of cause and effect. Buddhism teaches that from this wider perspective, the law of cause and effect is utterly unerring. We have a very narrow view and only see the present life, which is why we feel the law of cause and effect is unjust and unreliable. But from the point of view of a Buddha whose life is eternal, there is clearly no mistake in this law. So, when something happens to us that seems unfair, the best thing to do is self-reflect, acknowledging that we must have planted bad seeds in the past, and then keep on trying to do good deeds. We can do acts of kindness for others, resolve to keep our promises, reflect on ourselves, and improve. Buddhism teaches that these are good deeds that will bring us happiness. Sakyamuni Buddha encouraged us to do a number of different good deeds, so we should put those into practice. You might wonder what the point of doing this is if you won't get immediate results, but you will get results. It's just a matter of time. Perhaps the results won't come to you today, but just be patient. They might come to you in a month's time, in a year's time, in 10 years' time, or even in a future life, but they are sure to come to you. Buddhism teaches, just keep planting good seeds. You're sure to reap the rewards. There's no need to fret if you don't see the results right away. In conclusion, I'd like you to know that Buddhism teaches that all seeds you plant will definitely come back to you. Perhaps it might take some years, but once it happens, you'll see that this teaching really is true. Today, I talked about 2 points regarding why bad things happen to good people based on the Buddhist teachings. The first was that we are not aware of the bad deeds we are doing, so getting bad results seems completely unfair to us. The second was that we only have a narrow view of our existence, which also contributes to life seeming unfair. On this channel, I talk about what exactly it is that Buddhism teaches from a variety of different angles, so if you'd like to learn more, I'd be delighted if you'd subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching today's video.